but it's just that. So I mean, I went through this myself, right? And that's probably what's motivating some of my dislike of some of the ideas is that I feel like as I adopted some of Peterson's views on things, I basically developed false beliefs about things, and that led to me having like weird conversations at work. It led to me developing kind of like strange religious beliefs or becoming like
Sure.
a kind of religious fundamentalist, having strange ideas about relationships as well. Like, and I think I hurt myself and my partner because of the ideas of responsibility in Peterson's work or his approaches to relationships and
Interesting.
sexuality as well and things like that. So,
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot that can be said about
Yeah,
each of
yeah.
those things, but that's the objection broadly is just that I think it can lead to false beliefs, and those false beliefs can hurt people,
Yeah.
basically.
And we could go down a number of roads, so that's interesting. So, um, I guess so. The point you said about responsibility, um, you had some false beliefs about responsibility that were somewhat negative or something like that. That's actually one of the things that I would say something similar, where, um, Jordan Peterson, it's like, he's speaking to millions of people, right? So he's giving advice that is inherently going to be generalized, but that doesn't mean that, and the natural conclusion of that is going to be some of the advice he's giving might work for a broad, swath of the population, but for some people it doesn't work. And I remember him saying something to the effect of like, people need to adopt more responsibility. And then he said something like, it's possible to adopt too much, but that's a rarer problem. But I think fell into that category where it was like, I'm now going to take on everyone else's problems as, my own, like, all the suffering in the world, it's on me to do. Um, so I'm curious, what was your experience with that, with taking on too much responsibility, or if that's what it was or something like that?
Maybe your experience there might be a little bit different to
Sure.
mine. For me personally, the way that I integrated that message into my life, it was more to do with work and this idea of being like work as in my what my career was, what I should be satisfied with, what I should do, and also my romantic relationship as well. So, I was 21 and I was doing a degree apprenticeship at the time, so I was working full time as a software engineer at this place. And I think that the work environment there, now looking back, was kind of fairly toxic and unhealthy in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And the relationship that I was in just wasn't a good one for me for a bunch of reasons. But as a result of the kind of message that Peterson was putting forward, I was like, well, I've got to take these things seriously. So if I'm finding it bad, the problem's with me. And what I need to do is, somehow make myself be okay with the responsibility of just going to this workplace every day and doing this thing that isn't satisfying, because that's kind of like what a man does. And then I'll
Sure.
work on this relationship and we'll like buy a house and get married young, because this is, taking on all that responsibility, and that's like the correct pattern of living, to kind of lean into. And I think that was really wrong. I was very naive.
Sure.
I should have seen red flags in the workplace as either things. Well, I think in that workplace in particular, they were really above my pay grade to resolve or contribute to in any sense. Like, because this is a big company with places, in it with buildings and organizational structure across different continents. It's like I can't restructure that. I can't say stop being like toxic in this specific way that you structure hierarchy, the kind of like high corporate hierarchy that you have, and the way that people have to, play the internal politics to climb that ladder rather than
Right.
focusing on the things that matter. I think in that situation I was better off just sort of like leaving when I could and going to work somewhere else that was healthier. And I mean, I eventually did do that, but I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like that was the right course of action to take. I think because of some of the messages that were being put across by Peterson that I kind of integrated into my life. And I think there's similar themes, in the relationship as well, where I probably held onto that or got made that too serious when there were kind of red flags and incompatibility issues between us. And definitely with the idea of like buying a house young and being prepared to have a family young and things like that. I mean, we both wound up getting way more hurt than we should have been as 21, 22-year olds in a relationship. It could have just been that we just split up, but instead there's like a mortgage involved and all that stuff.
Sure. Because
And
you felt you needed to take the responsibility and do all these things when it wasn't necessarily
exactly.
prudent at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I think that's one of the outcropping. That's one of the ways the kind of message manifested in my life as this negative thing. And there's even like little things within that, so for example, conversations I would have had with people where I would have said that their ideas were kind of like cultural Marxism or something, right? And they just weren't. I just wasn't engaging in political discourse in a very healthy way. Like I couldn't really see the various different like economic or social policies that people sort of favored in different areas, and I couldn't see the diversity between those different positions. Like someone can have like different economic ideas than they do about like social ideas and stuff. And it was just all intertwined because anyone who disagreed with me about certain things was kind
Was
of
a
like branded
postmodern
as being on the left.
neo-Marxist. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
Right.
sort of thing. And I kind of did think that there was this big conspiracy theory, going on behind the scenes with like HR departments and the universities and stuff to put forward this ideology. And I mean, I think there are people who have really bad ideas who are in those circles, that I disagree with about that, like their views of feminism and stuff like that now. But I don't think that there's this big sort of like conspiracy and like a one feeding into the other, and they're trying to like bring down the West or displace the man as the head of the family, like all these sorts of things that I used to believe. And I think that those views alienated people as well. But
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely get the idea of like, if you start explain like you're in a workplace talking to someone, you're like, well, this is, don't you understand? The postmodern neo-Marxists are doing this and all that. It's like, okay, you're on a different planet. Um, that
well,
I
they had quite
understand.
harmful. They had quite harmful diversity schemes at the place that I was at. So I mean, I was definitely unfairly treated in comparison to my like female colleagues
Sure.
because they wanted to have they wanted to be able to say, look, we've got these like young women in who are on like the fast track to management, and so look how diverse we are. And I mean that was unfair, but then I filtered all of this through this story of like this big
Conspiracy lens. Yeah. Right.
of like the postmodern neo-Marxism taking over,
Right.
and that just wasn't helpful, and it meant I couldn't have healthy conversations with people about these issues as well
Sure.
because everything was
Yeah, there's definitely um I think a risk of flattening the idea like well it's just a conspiracy versus well maybe this is it's an ideology that hijacks people's good intentions and only hijacks a part of it so that they pursue these unfair policies or something like that.